Blake Toppmeyer is the senior national college football columnist for the USA Today Sports Network. He's also the host of SEC Football Unfiltered. You can hear episodes available each and every week wherever you get your podcasts. Follow him on X at @BToppmeyer. Blake, do you think a 24 or a 2018 playoff sounds better?
I think they both sound terrible, and maybe we just advance this to 136 team playoff where everybody gains entry.
Remember when Coach K, in the COVID year, when they were going to miss the tournament, and he made a motion to have everybody make the tournament?
Yeah, that's where this seems like it's heading, right? I mean, really what this is, a 24-28 team playoff, it's just kind of a rebrand of Tony Petitti's obsession with playoff games. Like, this just sort of incorporates the play-in games as part of the official tournament, and instead of, having them outside the tournament and calling them play-in games. So I thought it was a bad idea before. I think it's a bad idea now. I think it's going to be dead in the water. And really, with the SEC changing its conference schedule for 2026 and beyond, the Big Ten is sort of losing its leg to stand on in any arguments against the 5+11 model.
I was thinking about it this way. I know you can't actually do this, but let's do it as a thought experiment. If the House settlement didn't exist, do you actually think we'd be considering expanding the playoff, or do you think we'd be doing what we've done in the past, which is, all right, we've got this 12-team format. Let's see how it goes. Let's keep getting some data. If we need to tweak it. It just feels to me like everything is based upon we've got to create more revenue right now.
Well, I do think it's based upon we got to create more revenue. I guess I disagree that we wouldn't be doing this if not for the House settlement. I think the House settlement makes for a convenient excuse or rationalization to what I think they would have done all along, which is pursue more revenue. Because now, okay, maybe they can say it's a necessity because of House, but there are other things that they could do to prevent this necessity. And even if you didn't have House, I think they would want more revenue for the reasons that they've always wanted more revenue, which is to stuff it in their own pockets. So I think they would be looking at expansion regardless. It's just that is now added as an explainer to maybe why this is necessary. But there are other things too. Like, I think once coaches got a taste of the bigger playoff and saw how many more teams it brought into the equation this past year, now you have that next layer of coaches that are wondering, and not just coaches, but ADs and presidents that are wondering, like, well, what about us, right? Like, oh, well, we might have a hard time getting into the top 12, but if it were 16 or 24, we could join the party. And so I think seeing that play out with the 12-team playoff, and you had several first-time qualifiers, you now have that next rank wondering, how big do we need to get this thing so that we can be part of the party?
Yeah, I think that's an interesting point, because how many coaches think realistically, if we flip one game, we're in? Because, you know what I mean? Like, that's like what it really boils down to is, and again, a lot of times those coaches ignore the fact that you could have probably flipped a game in the other direction, but they sit there and go, I would imagine, in the SEC, well, we know if you flip one game for Alabama, South Carolina, and Ole Miss, their seasons are different. But in the Big Ten, if you think about it, if Illinois probably flips a game, maybe they're in that conversation. In the Big 12, about half the teams, if you flip one game, they're back in the conversation. And I can see where that's intoxicating. I guess the other question I had is, was that serious? Like, I know they said, hey, this is, what was their terminology? Napkin, back of the napkin math or whatever. Like, they were acknowledging this was the idea, but they did present it, or Tony Petitti presented it to the Big Ten ADs, and they all said, yep, sounds good, present that. Like, was that really a serious offer? Did they think that was going to go through?
I think it was semi-serious. I sort of, you mentioned this back of the napkin narrative that's sort of been floated as, I think, cover for the Big Ten. And I kind of reject that narrative because to your point, like back of the napkin ideas usually don't leave the room where the napkin is.
Right.
You know, that's what back of the napkin ideas are. I mean, it's sort of like ludicrous things that you doodle out during meetings, but they never escape the meeting room.
It's a workshop.
They're workshopping. They're never leaving the workshop. They're not ready to be presented to the world. This was leaked far and wide and was presented to the world. It was floated as a legitimate, well, we don't think it's legitimate, but it was floated as a semi-rational idea. So it jumped the shark from going to something doodled out on a napkin during a meeting among Big Ten minds to, hey, we've kind of cooked up something here. Let's see if it sticks. And so, yeah, I think that's where, you know, we can all sit here and say, well, everybody has all these back of the napkin ideas, right? So what's so crazy about this, this one? Well, what's crazy about this one is it advanced beyond the napkin, outside the room where the napkin was, and into the ecosystem, only to be swatted down in a matter of minutes.
Well, I mean, reportedly, Petiti took it to Sankey. It's like, what's the difference?
Correct.
It was serious enough. And again, I understand this could be, everyone does the whole, well, this could have been leveraged to get what they really wanted. And look, this week they got the 9th SEC game. It's like, I don't think those two things are related. There's no way a 24 to 28 team playoff idea is what all of a sudden got Greg to be like, you know what? This is going to get my people on board finally. He's wanted the 9th game forever.
He wanted a 9th game forever. And people that believe the SEC acquiesced on a 9th game because the Big Ten floated a 2018 team playoff, like they're not even in the right area code of reality. The SEC added a 9th conference game, not as an acquiesce to the Big Ten. They added a 9th conference game because they wanted to add a 9th conference game, because their off-season propaganda campaign to get the College Football Playoff Committee to tweak how it evaluates records, how it evaluates strength of schedule, worked. And it is not coincidence that 2 days after the playoff committee announced that it would be changing the way it evaluates strength of schedule, it would be adding a strength of record component, it would be devaluing cupcake results, and it would be minimizing the penalty for losing to good teams. It is not a coincidence that 2 days later, the SEC then added its 9th conference game. So, yeah, I mean, up in Big Ten.
May I throw in one other factor?
Yeah.
Because I honestly think it was more than, I actually am not even buying the narrative about the strength of record, the new metrics, if you will. I am buying the ESPN doubled the money. This summer they were offering 2.5.
I think it was twofold, though. I do think, this has been about money for years.
Yeah.
But I do think if push came to shove, could the SEC gotten more money a year ago? I think that's plausible. Like I think it is a companion deal. It's the money plus gaining some clarity that the SEC felt that they needed on the playoff. That wasn't insignificant, the playoff tweak. But the fact that this was just the SEC bowing to some Big Ten pressure campaign, that's not what happened here. I think if the SEC wouldn't have gotten the dollar signs and wouldn't have gotten the change that it desired from the playoff committee, I don't care what the Big Ten would have done. I think the SEC would have stayed at 8 conference games.
Yeah, I'm with you. But I mean, the fact that they are going to 9, I think all of us can celebrate it. I know you've written about it. Hey, Now don't fret, everyone. We're still going to make sure we keep the FCS ecosystem going. I'm going to sure those games are going to stick. I will say what did surprise me a little bit was the SEC announcing, in addition to the 9th conference game, they're going to keep the additional Power 4 game, or however they're going to define it, Power 4 game, unless you get into a bind and then you need to schedule Washington State, you can do so. That kind of took me by surprise, because that's also hey, Big Ten, I know a lot of them do play an extra power game, but it's not required.
That was huge. When I saw that announcement hit my inbox yesterday, that was the first thing I was looking for. Is the SEC going to ditch its requirement to play a big boy in the non-conference schedule. And that was sort of the news that kind of people were missing a little bit at first. And I get it, right? Like, I mean, this ninth conference game has been debated for years and years and years. They constantly kick the can down the road. But that was the huge piece of it, I thought, was the portion of the announcement that said membership will continue to be required to play a non-conference big boy for a total of 10 Power 4 games, plus Notre Dame counts. 10 Power 4 games, though, at a minimum. Teams can choose to schedule more than 10, but they are required now to have 10 Power 4 opponents, and that caps the number of cupcakes at 2. Whereas, as you said, in the Big Ten, teams have the option, and several of them are now pursuing this option. It is not the majority, but it is now up to several Big Ten teams that are pursuing the option of playing 3 cupcake games in a season and playing no non-conference big boys. Now, the Big Ten's argument had been, well, hey, the SEC only plays 8 conference games, and some of them play 3 cupcakes, so why can't we do that? Okay, sure. But now the SEC has changed its scheduling, and it sort of, I think, puts the Big Ten on its back foot a little bit and says, like, how are they going to respond, if at all, now? And as well with the ACC, right?
Yep.
The ACC now becomes the last Power 4 conference that plays just 8 conference games. So it puts them a little bit back-footed as well.
Yeah, and I know that Dellinger also had the report that if the SEC does go through, the ACC will probably follow suit, but they've not made it official. So I'm with you now. Like, it puts even more pressure on them because, you know, your league top to bottom isn't even as strong as the other two. I was thinking about this. How long do we have to wait until the griping about which schools get which permanent opponents?
Well, not at all, because that started 2 years ago when Nick Saban was still a coach, right?
Yeah.
I mean, he was already griping.
Oh, no, people have been griping. Back in the good old days of the 2 divisions with 6 teams each, before it even went to, oh, man. Because you would have some teams, you know, that was before they had, most teams had 2 permanent cross-division opponents. And, oh, man, the whining was just excellent.
Well, right. And in Tennessee for years whined that it got Alabama as its crossover opponent annually, and Auburn could whine that it got Georgia as its crossover opponent, while Vanderbilt and Ole Miss.
Well, it was a historic rivalry, Blake. You don't understand. There's a lot of history between those 2 programs.
Yeah, so I've heard. Yeah, I mean, that's going to happen, right? And what's interesting is there will be some variance in the toughness of those collections of 3 teams that are assigned as permanent rivals, where I think the variance will be a lot less drastic is if you look at each 9-game conference mashup in totality, right? Which is really what's
exactly. I'm with you. This has always been my argument. And I understand some years it won't work out this way because there's going to be a rotational element to it. But if you have 3 tougher permanent opponents, that means you have a wider range in your choice of 6 of bad opponents. Like, it all it all tends to net out in the end.
That's totally right. I mean, you have to have an IQ of a certain base level to understand that argument, and maybe that's where some folks go awry here. But yeah, that's exactly right. Like, if you're drawing 3 big boys as your rivals, or like 2.5, a big boy and then somebody else that's got half a pulse, that means you've got all the weaklings available to draw as your rotational opponents. And so, right, I think that's the whole thing, is there will be some variance in a 9-game conference schedule, as there always is.
Yeah.
Does anybody see?
I mean, this was the point last year. Remember, all the coaches were griping about. This is what's confused me. All the coaches behind the scenes were whining about Texas's schedule last year. Mm-hmm. Yet, where's the pre-whining about Texas's schedule this year? Is it just because they flipped locations? Is it really that different?
Yeah, and here's the thing. The coaches are going to whine about which 3 rivals they get assigned.
100%.
But here's the other element that requires a certain baseline of IQ. The higher percentage of the overall conference that you play the less variance from one schedule
Bingo.
to another in terms of relative strength. So adding a ninth conference game, I don't care who your three rivals are, playing a higher each team playing a higher percentage of the conference will decrease, not fully, but it will decrease the variance from one schedule to the next. I mean, let's play it out. If you played 100% of your conference, if everybody did that, there would be no variance in conference strength of schedule. And on down the line.
Blake, that's just not true. If you got to play Vanderbilt late in the season, that was too easy. That was always my favorite. It was when then people wouldn't argue about whose opponents they had because the opponents were the same. It was when they played them in the season. That team was a lot better early.
Yeah,
I always love that one.
Home road type arguments of, you're right. The arguments would continue. I heard one from a fan in the Big Ten land yesterday about how the SEC has it easier because they don't play a lot of non-conference games west of the Mississippi River. And I thought, I'm someone who grew up very close to the Mississippi River, and I thought, what makes the Mississippi River so special, and what makes everybody on the west side of it so tough? I mean, is anyone really particularly afraid to march into Rose Bowl Stadium and play UCLA in front of a friends and family crowd? Like, not exactly a hostile environment there. I think that's not quite so tough as playing Clemson on the road in Death Valley east of the Mississippi River. But people come up with whatever arguments that kind of suit their league.
I kind of like that one because that really is some like galaxy brain, because I know what the argument they want to make the argument that they don't play east of the Mississippi or west of the Mississippi. But now that you have the Texas schools in Oklahoma, Arkansas, Missouri, it's like that technically crosses the Mississippi River. So you've got to really start to shoehorn that argument.
Oh, yeah. And Tennessee tried to play west of the Mississippi, and then Nebraska ducked them.
Yeah,
and,
this should have been the argument. SEC schools don't change time zones enough.
Yeah, and that's what it was. Like, it was almost like this backhanded way of saying, like, well, Oregon's got it tough because they have to fly across a couple time zones and play Rutgers. And it's like, well, okay, nobody forced them to do that. They chose to. They
literally begged to do that.
Yeah. And also, like, I get that cross-country travel's hard. I do it for work sometimes. We've all done it. But I'd still rather fly across the country and play Rutgers, or I'd rather be Ohio State flying across the country and playing UCLA on the road than play a road game at night at LSU when maybe I can ride on a bus to the game. I'd rather fly across country and play in front of the friends and family crowd at UCLA than take that short drive to Tiger Stadium and play in front of 100,000 people that have been sucking down hooch all day.
Am I missing all the times Ohio State's gone to play Fresno? Like I was trying to, if the argument is the non-conference west of the Mississippi, it's like, yeah, I know that Michigan will play Fresno in Ann Arbor, but like I'm missing all the times that those were home and homes.
Yeah, I agree. And like I said, and I don't really. I love a good college football. Like, because that person, thought as soon as it fired it off, nailed it. Oh yeah, they
nailed it.
Got him. Yeah, and here we are talking about it, although more as poking fun at the argument than giving credence to it.
All right, what else interests you? I did enjoy. For those that don't know, I told the story yesterday that Blake and I had a very nice, relatable moment. Blake, growing up as a solid Midwesterner, loves his Busch Light, just like our Iowa State brethren. But he found the Farmer's Can. Not only did he find the Farmer's Can, found it in the 24-pack, and I related it to when I found a beer that when I was living overseas that was my favorite beer ever, and I found it in a Publix, and my wife was like, "You've never looked at me like that." And that was a nice, awkward moment for both of us, but she was not as excited. But I was thinking about it in these terms. Yeah, I'm not acting like tomorrow's the start of college football. I'll have it on. It's going to be my daughter's birthday party. I'm not going to prevent anyone from watching that. I hope my wife knows that, but at this point, she's pretty much accepted that reality. But it is an interesting game because, it feels like anytime you get teams that are in the top half of the Big 12, this could have implications on who actually represents the playoff for them.
Yeah, you get two playoff contenders squaring off. I mean, I think it's fair to call both Iowa State and Kansas State that, because you're going to have one representative at a minimum from the Big 12, and either of these teams could win the conference. And here we have a conference game out of the gate. I mean, I agree with you. Like, this almost feels like a big week of the NFL preseason, if you will. The difference is these games actually count, but in terms of like just the general feel of it, it doesn't. That's kind of what you were nodding to there. Like, it doesn't feel like this is actually the start of the season, but there is some buzz around it, and in that way, I guess it feels like a big NFL preseason type of situation. Even though these games count, I'm kind of like you. Like, I'll be particularly interested in Farmageddon, and I am glad that I got my Farmer's cans shortly before Farmageddon. That just felt right. Felt like a gift from the gods there, the corn gods and the football gods. But beyond that, yeah, it's that's the thing about week 0 is, we hear for years and years and years now, when is the season? Is the season going to be officially moved up a week? And it just feels like one of those off-season narratives that when we get bored in June or July, we got to play the hits and have that story. And maybe one day it'll come, although, like I said, it feels like that story is about a decade old now of when that's going to happen. And there's so many issues that would arise with that, namely, and I think this one is often under-discussed. If you started the season a week earlier, rivalry weekend, that ratings bonanza that happens on Thanksgiving week every year, would then shift up in the calendar to the week before Thanksgiving, and you'd have like the kind of watered down conference championship games or whatever replaces conference championship games moving into Thanksgiving week. Maybe that's where we eventually go. But isn't it really hard to see college football? I know there's been so many changes in the sport, but one thing that doesn't change is rivalry week is Thanksgiving week, and those games are ratings bonanzas. So maybe one day week 0 becomes the official start of the season, but selfishly, I sort of like it exactly how it is. The only thing I would love to tweak if I was college football commissioner and can wave a magic wand is, instead of one good game in week 0, would it be possible to get one in every time slot? I don't need, everything to move forward one week, but if you could get 3 interesting games instead of just the one, and you get one in every time, the 3 main time windows, that would make week 0 a little more compelling.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think the only question I've always had is, when you have, it does seem to me like the years where we have compelling week 0, week 1 stinks.
Yeah.
And we do have a much better week 1. But at the same time, I mean, honestly, this wouldn't shock me. If the Big 12 is going to keep looking for these revenue and inventory opportunities, like, I think Tony Petit, or I'm sorry, I think Brett Yormark's basically going to be like, boys, we're going to be willing to play around the world and around the clock. You could tell me where this is like the unofficial kickoff of Big 12, where, hey, we find out here's the 6 teams they like it. They think that are going to be setting the tone for them, and they play an early game, a mid-afternoon game, and a night game. You could talk me into that.
I love that idea. I love that. You just let this be the lid lifter for the Big 12. They seize the spotlight on a weekend when, the SEC and Big 10 big boys aren't playing. The Big 12 takes advantage, gets its moment. Doesn't have to have the entire conference start playing in week 0. But like you said, you get 6 of the 16 teams playing who knows where on the globe. Brett Yormark for a while was obsessed with Mexico. He's faded that one, but he seems like the type of guy that could get a new apple of his eye at sort of the drop of a hat or drop of a sombrero.
It seems like Mexico. His standard is if the check clears.
Yeah, as long as the check clears, or maybe as someone's even writing the check.
Yes,
the
exactly.
Possibility of the check clears.
As long as he believes, as long as he has gotten proof that he's gotten the pre-application loan that says like the bank will cover this.
That's right. Yeah. And so, man, this is a great idea. Sometimes we workshop stuff in this segment. It's just kind of fun to debate. And It's like in the real world, I don't know if this would happen, but this is one. Everything we know about Brett Yormark in the Big 12, would it really surprise you if he's
Nope.
back channeling and working up some deals feverishly right now to have games played all across Europe or
the Big 12 goes to Europe.
Yeah, Big 12 goes to Europe. I mean, it actually would be genius, frankly. I mean, that's the thing with Yormark is in his position, and sometimes I poke fun at him. I mean, some of his ideas seem a little bit.
He loves a microphone.
Yeah, he does.
And he leaves himself vulnerable, but at the same time, I don't think everything he says is stupid.
No, it's not. And in his position, he's not a Super 2 conference
Correct.
leader.
He's
right?
not. He's not operating from a position of strength.
Yeah, that's where I think Tony Petitti stubbed his toe. It's like he's operating at times as if he's the commissioner of the Big 12 and needs to throw stuff against the wall and see what sticks. And it's like, no, man, like you're the commissioner of a Super 2 league. You don't have to live in the world of the absurd. Whereas Brett Yormark, he can kind of be a little bit freewheeling, and some of his ideas stick. I mean, credit to him, his conference is going to have center stage here at 11 a.m. Central Time in week 0 with 2 top 25 teams playing. And so I love this idea. Yeah, get 6 Big 12 teams playing every year in week 0 across the globe and let them have the spotlight, and everybody else, all the other Power Fours can start in week 1.
I was thinking about this. We'll wrap because you spurred a thought there. I've got a half-baked idea in the spirit of the Big Ten. Here's some back and napkin math.
Come on.
I think Petitti works for Fox. Every idea, I think, like in the end, I think this is true. Obviously, ESPN has a lot of say of what happens in the SEC. So, for instance, when definitely not the SEC runs the idea by, but when Texas and Oklahoma totally reach out to ESPN to see if they can get a full share, and the SEC totally didn't do that first, ESPN's got to sign off on it. Now, that was a no-brainer, no duh, moving on. I think, though, when you look at more of how the SEC operates, ESPN is clearly an influence, but I don't think it's a driver. When you look at the ideas and what the Big 12 wants, every idea just seems that's exactly what Fox would want.
No, I think there's some good thinking in that theory at the very least. There at times from the outside looking in, it almost seems as if Fox tells Tony Petitti to jump, and he says, "How high would you like there, Fox? I'll try to jump as high as I can, even if everybody laughs at my attempt." And the SEC doesn't position itself that way. Maybe it doesn't have to. I do think it helps when your media partner is the rights holder to the college football playoff. So there's a built-in advantage there, and I think the SEC has a greater abundance of the big brands than the Big Ten. I mean, the Ohio State, Michigan, they can go toe to toe with anybody, and at times they can wipe the floor with anybody, but doesn't have quite the abundance.
I even throw Penn State in there.
Yeah, Penn State's knocking on that door. They're like that 1B tier, I would say. But I think the SEC has a greater abundance down ballot, but that is just such an advantage where your media partner, like I said, is the rights holder of the college football playoff, and that's one of the downsides to the layered media approach that the Big Ten has. Is I think there is a certain level of savviness by having yourself across the dial, across Fox, CBS, and NBC, but you're missing the big one there when you have nothing, no piece of your pie on the ABC, ESPN platforms that just so happen to have the rights to the college football playoff. And so, if Fox wants to kind of get into that mix, you can kind of see with the idea of where maybe play-in games that aren't officially part of the playoff might have emerged from, and why they might have started looking so good to the Big Ten when they seem so goofy to the rest of us is, well, they're not officially playoff games. It's something that Fox can have that's almost its portion of the playoff, but wink, wink, it's not really the playoff. And you can sort of see how an idea like that might emerge and might become popular in the Big Ten. And while the rest of us are scratching our head thinking, who said we needed play-in games?
Well, I think the other aspect of it, we'll wrap up here because you've been great with the time. ESPN, I can't believe I'm about to take up for him. I don't think ESPN schemes nearly as much as people think they do. I think ESPN, as a rights holder, I think what they worry the most about is trying to juggle their calendar to make sure they've got as many big events throughout as many opportune moments on TV as possible. Like, they have certain dates, and I think they care about a calendar. I don't think they try to bend and shape the will of sports to their liking. Now, I think part of that is also because you have to consider, all right, they take a very backseat approach to the NFL. The NFL dictates a lot. Mm-hmm. And even the NBA has started to dictate a lot. And so I think they deal with more, whereas Fox's other big partners are usually and historically have been, yes, the NFL, but everybody knows, hey, you're doing whatever the NFL wants. But with baseball's been way more receptive to, like, all right, what are the ideas? Like, for instance, when Fox told Major League Baseball, hey, we're putting playoff games on FS1, Fox or baseball was just like, cool, whatever. And then NASCAR is just like, hey, anything to give us the exposure. And so they've been much more like open to ideas, whereas it feels like Fox tries to scheme a lot more with college football than ESPN does.
Yeah, and I think, too, just relating this to a college football lens and kind of leaving the other sports out of it, from a college football lens, ESPN comes at this from the advantage of they have the rights to the best portion of the product. And that's not just the playoff. That's when you have exclusivity with the SEC, and they have a stake in other conferences too, not the Big Ten, but other conferences. You have exclusivity with the SEC. You have the college football playoff. You have a piece of the pie of some other leagues. They own, in sum, the best and biggest portion of the product. That immediately puts you at an advantage, and it makes it to where you don't always have to be making these Machiavellian movements.
Yeah, you're not fighting from underneath.
Yeah,
which is what I never figure out. Why didn't we get through the portion where ESPN? I thought we got through the calendar where ESPN didn't have the exclusive negotiating rights, but Fox never really put an effort into getting the playoff. That shocked me, that when we were doing all that wrangling, that Fox never even really put forth an effort to try and get a piece of it.
Yeah, I think ESPN has just identified that college football is they've prioritized, I guess, college football maybe more consistently and ardently than some of their.
Yeah, I mean, I know people point to it. It was a counter program, and it's been a success. But Big Noon, like, in the end, Fox put their big game at noon. You know what I mean? Like, ESPN sits there and goes, well, we're going to try to put 3 big games right in a row on ABC, and you're never changing the channel.
Right. And so to Fox's credit, I think they found a window where it makes sense for them. Big Noon is a nice counter when you
totally agree.
Yeah, you can't have the full day window, but it's like, if you're ABC, ESPN, you kind of shrug the shoulders and say, okay, we might sometimes lose out on the noon window, but as far as the day on the whole, they're sitting pretty Saturday after Saturday after Saturday.
All right, buddy. Have a great weekend.
Okay, thanks.
Blake Toppmeyer of the USA Today Sports Network. We come back. Let's get into the list. We got Eric Dickerson on perhaps a conspiracy about why Shedeur fell in the draft. Got to talk about that, as well as more from the world of sports. We'll do all that during hour number 2. But before we do that, I want to remind you the program brought to you by our good friends over at Birdies. Memphis' #1 spot for virtual golf. They have 3 full golf simulators, full service bar, great television selection, and also don't forget on Saturdays and Sundays, if you're into the English Premier League, we got the Chelsea Blues right now up on West Ham 3-1. But if you want to watch some Premier League soccer on Saturdays and Sundays, they'll be open at 9 a.m. to go and watch that. Also, if you got your fantasy football draft, apparently mine has just been moved up to Sunday night. Spoiler alerts, heads up, honey. I now have that on Sunday night. you can also do it at Birdie's. Draft in person. They'll put it right there on one of the big projectors for you. August is, of course, a great time to take advantage of discounts. If you book your tee time in advance at golfatbirdies.com and you have 4 players or more throughout the rest of the month, you'll get 40% off standard rates. 3 players, 30% off. 2 players, 20% off. 1 player, you will get 10% off. Also during August, if you buy a full membership, you'll receive a 6-month membership practice membership for free. Golfatbirdies.com. Follow them on Instagram at Birdies901. List coming up next right here on Jeffrey Wright and Company, 92.9 FM, ESPN.
Hey, you can win free tickets to see Shine Down at FedEx Forum on August 30th. Just log in and sign up now.